Good evening, everyone. I'm doing my discussion today on Mrs. Abigail Adams, wife of President John Adams, mother of President John Quincy Adams. Quite an interesting, fascinating woman, and I just thought it was pretty neat getting to learn a little bit about her because, unfortunately, history's kind of gotten away from telling us about this woman and many others for the Revolutionary time. Um, this is a quick biography. Abigail was born in Weymouth, Massachusetts, November 22nd, 1744. Died October 28th, 1818, in Quincy, Massachusetts. Her family, her maiden name Quincy, her family was well established in Massachusetts and a very politically involved family. Very kept up with the politics, kept up with the uh, times, and kept up with what was going on in the community and in the government. Um, and again, she married John Adams, who later became president. She married him in 1764 and later became the mother of another president, John Quincy Adams. Um, Quite an interesting woman. She was well educated. She I put it on the slide here, opinionated feminist. For that, by modern standards, she was very much a feminist. She was all about equal rights and women being treated the same as men, even back in those days. And she was very outspoken about it. She was um, more than willing to talk about what she believed, and she was more than willing to say it instead of keeping it in, like you may think a lot of women in those times did. Um, she was, like I said, she was well educated. She was an avid reader. Um, the third note there, outspoken, and corresponding with various individuals personally and politically. She wrote lots of letters to lots of different people. Just to her husband, John Adams, she wrote over 1,100 letters. And as you see there at the bottom, she's noted as to have written over 4,300 letters in her life. And Thomas Jefferson and Miss Mercy Warren and James and Dolly Madison and Martha Washington are just a few um, of the people she actually wrote to and wrote back and forth with. um, Again, by modern standards, she's a feminist. She championed women's rights and was adamant that women be treated equal to men. And she's quoted here at the bottom. It says, "I long to hear that you have declared an independency, and by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors." This is uh, a quote from one of her letters that she wrote to her husband John during the uh, while he was in Continental Congress debating for the I'm sorry, not debating, but as they were arranging the Declaration of Independence and putting it together and getting ready to do a final draft, she actually, this is part of a quote from a letter she wrote to her husband at the time. Her political life, she actually couldn't stand being out in public or in front of the public, I should say, despite how adamant her family was about keeping up with politics and keeping up with the times. She actually didn't like being in the public's eye, and she felt like she was chained up, and she felt like she was more of a like a sideshow. Like she just didn't like it. She didn't enjoy it. But despite that, she was very supportive as she went out of her way to make sure that she gave her opinions to her husband John, even before the before the revolution, during the revolution, even during his presidency. She was very opinionated towards him continuously, and he was very open with it too. He wrote back and forth with her numerous times about how getting her opinion, given his opinion, and he very rarely went against her opinion or disagreed with her about something. But at the very top there, she was the first woman in the country to be both the first and the second lady. Of course, the first lady when John Adams became the president, and the second lady when John Adams was the vice president to President George Washington. And excuse me, during that time as second lady, she actually became great friends with Martha Washington, and she's one of the many people that she wrote continuously with over her life and her history. This is actually a quite fascinating woman who was a before her times, I guess I should say. And just a little review right here again. Well educated, avid, loved reading, very outspoken, and despite her dislike of being in the public's eye, she was very supportive of her husband, even when he uh, was even when he was in a situation where he was not very popular with the public. She always stuck by him, and she was adamant that even the newspapers at the times and journalists and stuff would print that she was supportive of him, and she was always there to look out for him and to support him and encourage him. Um, Again, fascinating woman. I just thought she was very encouraging to see a woman like this, especially in this time, because women didn't get the limelight, I should say, and they didn't have a lot of rights. They were kind of took the back burner to their husbands, and in her case, she didn't. And President Adams was well okay with that. Um, but again, it's a fascinating woman. I think it's pretty awesome that she did what she did, and she tried to do her part to make sure that women were treated just like men were. Thanks. Have a good night.